It looks perfect. The water is clear, blue, calm. The surface reflects the sky, and everything about it says the pool is clean and safe. Most pool owners stop thinking right there. If the water looks good, the job feels done. But here's a question that most people never ask. What if the cleanest pool is actually the easiest one to misjudge? Pools don't warn you when something starts to go wrong. They don't turn cloudy right away. They don't suddenly smell bad. They don't flash a warning sign when the chemistry starts to drift or when contaminants start building under the surface. Most of the time, they stay clear while problems quietly develop in the background. That's what makes your pool deceptive. Visual clarity creates confidence, and confidence creates habits. You test less often, you brush less thoroughly, you assume yesterday's numbers still apply today, and most of the time, nothing bad happens. Until one day it does, and then it feels like it all came out of nowhere. In this video, we're going to talk about what can be hiding in a pool that looks perfectly clean, why clear water alone doesn't tell the whole story, and what you can do as a homeowner to stay ahead of it. Humans are wired to trust what we can see. Clear water feels safe because it matches what we expect safety to look like. When a pool turns green or cloudy, alarms go off immediately. But when water stays blue and transparent, our brains assume that everything under the surface must be fine. The problem is that pool water doesn't behave like drinking water in a glass. It's a constantly changing environment. Sunlight, temperature, swimmers, rain, debris, and circulation all influence what's happening chemically and biologically. Many of the most important changes happen long before the water looks any different. Clear water is a snapshot. It tells you what the water looks like right now, not what direction it's headed. A pool can be clear today, but unstable underneath. That instability doesn't always show itself until something tips the balance, like heavy swimmer use, a heat wave, or a missed test. This is why so many pool problems feel sudden. The conditions were building quietly for days or sometimes weeks. The water just hadn't crossed that visual threshold yet. Understanding that gap between appearance and reality is the foundation of everything else we're about to talk about. Chlorine is essential, but it's also widely misunderstood. A lot of people assume that chlorine is a kill-everything instant solution. Add enough of it and the pool just becomes sterile. That's not how it actually works. Chlorine is very good at controlling many common bacteria and viruses when it's present at the right levels and properly balanced. But it's not equally effective against everything, and it doesn't work the same way under all conditions. Chlorine effectiveness depends on several factors working together. Free chlorine level matters, but so does pH, stabilizer level, circulation, and contact time. If any one of those things is off, chlorine's ability to do its job drops. Another misconception is thinking in terms of single events. Many pools get shocked occasionally, but run under-sanitized the rest of the time. Chlorine works best when it's maintained consistently, not when it's added in bursts to fix visible problems. This matters because some organisms can survive against short exposures, and some chemical byproducts form when chlorine reacts with contaminants instead of actively sanitizing the water. So when we talk about risks in a clean pool, we're not talking about chlorine failing completely. We're talking about the limits of what chlorine alone can handle, especially when other parts of the system aren't supporting it. Two organisms that often come up in pool safety discussions are Cryptosporidium and Giardia. Both are microscopic parasites that can cause gastrointestinal illness, and both enter pools through human contamination. Cryptosporidium, often called crypto, is known for its chlorine resistance. It has a tough outer shell that will allow it to survive for days in a properly chlorinated pool. That doesn't mean it's common in every pool, but it does mean that chlorine doesn't eliminate it instantly. Giardia is less resistant than crypto, but it can still survive longer than many people expect in water that has low or inconsistent sanitizer levels. And like crypto, it's introduced by swimmers and spreads through the ingestion of contaminated water. The important point here isn't to panic, it's perspective. These organisms aren't visible. They don't make water cloudy, they don't create a smell, and their presence isn't obvious from a quick glance. What reduces risk is consistency. Maintaining proper free chlorine levels, keeping pH in range, ensuring good circulation, and avoiding swimming when sanitizer is low all work together to limit survival and spread. It's also why bather hygiene matters more than most people realize. Showering before swimming and avoiding swimming when sick significantly reduces what enters the water in the first place. Clear water doesn't mean these risks are present, but it doesn't guarantee that they aren't. And that's a theme that you'll see repeated throughout this video. One of the most common misconceptions about pools is the smell. People often say they love that strong pool smell because it feels clean and nostalgic. In reality, that smell is usually the sign of a problem. That sharp, stinging smell isn't chlorine itself, it's chloramines. Chloramines form when free chlorine bonds with nitrogen-containing compounds like sweat, urine, skin oils, and sunscreen. And once chlorine bonds like this, it's no longer doing much sanitizing. Chloramines are also responsible for red eyes, irritated skin, and that heavy feeling in the air around poorly managed pools. A pool with a strong odor often has chlorine that's tied up and ineffective, even if test strips show some levels present. That is why shocking a pool properly can improve comfort. Shocking breaks those bonds and frees chlorine back into an active form. But it's also why simply adding more chlorine without addressing the cause doesn't always solve the issue. Managing chloramines comes down to regular sanitation, good circulation, proper shocking when needed, and reducing what enters the pool. Again, the water can look perfectly clear while these chemical byproducts are building underneath. Biofilm is one of the least understood parts of pool maintenance. It's a thin, sticky layer created by microorganisms that allows them to attach to surfaces and protect themselves from chemicals. Now, biofilm doesn't usually form in open water. It forms on walls, steps, ladders, skimmers, plumbing, and inside your filters. Once established, though, it acts like a shield. Chlorine in the water struggles to penetrate it, which allows bacteria and algae to survive even when test results look like they're fine. This is why some pools seem to grow algae overnight. The algae didn't suddenly appear. It was already protected somewhere out of sight and finally spread into the water when conditions allowed. Physical cleaning is the main defense here. Brushing walls and steps, cleaning skimmers and baskets, and deep cleaning filters disrupts biofilm and exposes it to the sanitizer. Enzyme products can help break down oils that feed it, but they don't replace mechanical cleaning. Biofilm explains why chemistry alone doesn't always solve persistent problems. A pool can be chemically balanced on paper and still struggle if the surfaces aren't addressed. Clear water doesn't reveal what's happening inside of a skimmer throat or a filter housing. That's why hands-on maintenance matters as much as test numbers. Now, Legionella is one that often gets mentioned in water safety discussions, but it's important to put it in context. Legionella prefers warm, stagnant water and are more commonly associated with plumbing systems, heaters, hot tubs, and dead zones where the water doesn't circulate well. In a typical residential pool with good circulation and sanitizer levels, the risk is super low. Where risk increases is in areas where water sits warm and undisturbed, especially if sanitizer levels drop and biofilm is present. This is why spas, heaters, and infrequently used water features deserve extra attention. Running water regularly, maintaining sanitizer levels, and keeping surfaces clean all reduce those conditions that Legionella prefers. The takeaway isn't fear, it's awareness. Circulation matters. Stagnation creates opportunity. A pool that looks clear but isn't moving water effectively can still develop localized problems in hidden areas. Total dissolved solids, or TDS, refers to anything in your pool that is not pure H2O. That includes salts, minerals, metals, stabilizers, and residual chemicals that accumulate over time. TDS doesn't usually make the water cloudy. Instead, it affects how the water behaves. High TDS can reduce sanitizer efficiency, interfere with chemical balance, and make the water feel heavier or duller on the skin. Every chemical you add increases TDS slightly. Evaporation concentrates it. Adding mineral-rich water to top off your pool adds more. Over time, levels rise even if everything looks fine. This is why older water can become harder to manage. You add chemicals, but they don't seem to work as well. Chlorine demand increases, balance feels fragile. The solution isn't constant draining, it's awareness. Tracking water age, avoiding unnecessary chemical additions, and occasionally replacing a portion of the water can reset the system. Clean water doesn't show dissolved buildup. TDS is invisible, but the effects aren't. Phosphates are nutrients that algae uses for food. They enter pools from many sources. Leaves, dust, rain, fertilizers, soil, and even swimmers contribute small amounts over time. Chlorine kills algae, but it doesn't remove phosphates. And that's an important distinction. A pool can be free of visible algae, while still containing the nutrients that allow algae to return quickly once chlorine drops. High phosphate levels don't automatically mean there's a problem. Many pools operate fine with moderate phosphates as long as sanitizer is maintained. Issues arrive when chlorine becomes inconsistent and algae suddenly has both food and opportunity. This is why phosphate removal is situational. It's not mandatory for every pool, but it can help reduce chlorine demand and prevent recurring blooms in some cases. Reducing debris, rinsing decks, maintaining skimmers, and keeping leaves out all limit phosphate input. Again, nothing about phosphate levels is obvious from appearance alone. Cyanuric acid, or CYA, protects chlorine from the sunlight. Without it, chlorine burns off quickly, but with too much of it, chlorine becomes less active. The relationship matters more than the number itself. Free chlorine needs to be maintained as a percentage of CYA to remain effective. As CYA levels rise, chlorine levels must rise with it. This is where many pools get into trouble. Stabilized chlorine products add cyanuric acid over time. The water stays clear, but chlorine becomes less responsive, and algae prevention becomes harder, not easier. At that point, the pool isn't unsafe because chlorine is gone. It's vulnerable because chlorine is bound and less effective. Testing CYA regularly and adjusting chlorine targets accordingly prevents this drift. Sometimes a partial water change is the only way to bring levels back into a manageable range. Clear water doesn't tell you how active your chlorine really is. So what actually helps? A few good habits go a long way. Test regularly, not just when something looks wrong. Consistently brush your surfaces, don't just vacuum the bottom of the pool. Clean skimmers, baskets, and filters. And maintain circulation every day. Pay attention to how the pool behaves, not just how it looks. Strong smells, rising chlorine demand, or recurring algae are signals, even when the water is clear. Limit what enters the pool. Debris, oils, and contaminants add up faster than most people think. And none of this requires perfection. It just requires consistency. Pools are pretty forgiving when they're maintained steadily, but they can become unpredictable when they're ignored just because everything looks good. Clear water is reassuring, but it's incomplete. It tells you what the pool looks like right now, but not what's happening underneath. Clean water is a process. It's chemistry, circulation, physical cleaning, and awareness working together over time. You don't need to be a professional to understand this. You just need to be able to look beyond the surface and recognize that clarity is just one piece of the puzzle. If this helped you think about your pool differently, then hit the like button. It helps more pool owners find information that actually makes their pools more manageable. And consider subscribing so you don't miss any of our educational pool videos or pool tech reviews. I'm Kevin with Clearwater Chronicles, and remember, belly flops build character.